And welcome back into another edition of Catfish on Ice. This is episode 114 with Chad Minton and Rich Howe. And we got an awesome guest right now for you today. We've got Robby Stanley of 102.5 The Game. Been so kind enough to join us today for episode 114 because guess what? We have plenty to talk about if you haven't been following the Predators lately. There's plenty to talk about. Robby, how are you doing today, man? And thank you so much for joining us.
Boys, I'm doing great. Appreciate y'all having me on.
Oh, definitely. Awesome. We've been waiting a lot of, pretty much ever since we've been a podcast to have you on, man. So this is a long time coming. We're over 100 episodes in. We finally got you on here. First of all, I got to ask you, it's the opening Thursday of March Madness, the NCAA tournament. So it's been very kind of you to break into your NCAA tournament watching and your bracket watch. Has your bracket busted yet, Robby?
No, I'm alive so far. I'm sure that will change probably even as we speak. I know Iowa was struggling, and I haven't seen if they've gone final yet. So that's probably going to change at some point. But look, when I make it 1-for-1, I'm like, cool. We're off to a good start. Well, when Michigan won, I was like, cool, man. Cool.
Yeah. That first upset pick you make, you're like, okay, if I get that first upset pick I pick, then I'm feeling good about it. That's kind of where I'm at. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Right. It's like it's a big day, big day in the world of sports. And admittedly, I don't watch a ton of college basketball throughout the regular season just because I'm watching hockey most nights.
Absolutely.
So anytime I can do well, I'm cool with it.
There you go. All right. So, we got Robby Stanley. We got Robby Stanley of 102.5 The Game joining us right now on episode 114 of Catfish on Ice, brought to you by DraftKings, part of the Hockey Podcast Network. All right, Robby, let's start off with the elephant in the room, and we really want to get your thoughts on this, and that is, of course, what is going to happen with Filip Forsberg? I know we've been obsessing over this all season on this show right here. We've been talking about it since December, at least. We've just been we'll just talk about it almost every episode. It just comes up naturally a lot of times, and we're running out of time here. Monday's the trade deadline, so it's either re-sign Forsberg, maybe you trade him, or then fans really start getting uneasy because you could risk losing him for nothing. So, Robby, kind of tell us, what do you think the Preds need to do? What do you think's going to happen? Maybe. What would be a fair deal for Forsberg? All that stuff. Kind of give us your thoughts.
Well, I think it's fair to say that we're down to crunch time because, as you guys mentioned, the trade deadline is coming up on Monday, and this has obviously been something that David Poile and the Predators have been working on for a while. I talked to Filip back in training camp, and he kind of made it clear at that time of, I want to play out my contract, and I think everybody kind of freaked out at that time because they thought, man, is he just going to go all the way through? And maybe he will. I think a lot of that was posturing and negotiating. You got to remember when athletes are addressing their contract situation, they're not idiots. They know what's going on, and they have specific instructions from their agent as well. So I think Filip Forsberg wants to be here. Obviously, I think the Predators want him here. The question is, what is that sweet spot, and what does that number look like? And it's been interesting to me to watch Predators fans' reaction to this and the different, kind of deals that I guess they would give them. I threw out a question a couple weeks ago on Twitter, and I was like, if you could give Filip Forsberg a deal, what would your deal be? And there was anything from I'd sign him to an 8-year deal worth $10 million a year to I wouldn't sign him at all. And some people said 3 years or 4 years. And when it gets down to it, I could be wrong. But I think if you think that Filip Forsberg is going to sign anything less than an 8-year deal, I just don't see it. I don't think that makes any sense for Filip Forsberg because he knows that if he goes to the open market, somebody's going to give him a 7-year deal, and somebody's going to give him a 7-year deal worth a lot of money. So that's where, if you're the Predators, the ability to give him an 8th year should come in handy. Let's say the Predators give him an 8-year, $9 million contract. That's just a random number I threw out there yesterday. Well, that's $72 million that's guaranteed for Filip Forsberg. That means if he goes to the open market, somebody would have to sign him to a 7-year deal worth more than $10 million to match that. And then you can get real nerdy and we could get into state income tax and all that other stuff. And there's a lots that factors into it. I think at the end of the day, a deal's going to get done. whether that happens by Monday, I don't know. At this point, based on some comments that David Poyle has had on our station and on some conversations that I've had kind of behind the scenes, I'd be pretty surprised if they traded Filip Forsberg on Monday, even if he's not signed. Like I think the scenario, unless they're just blown away by something, or conversations change. I mean, conversations and negotiations can change very quickly. And if he makes it clear that, they're just not close and he's going to test the market, then maybe you have to consider if you're David Poyle. But my guess is Filip Forsberg's still going to be a member of the Nashville Predators next Tuesday, whether or not he's signed. And
that's awesome.
If he's not signed, Predators fans are going to freak out, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yes, they will. Absolutely, they will. So, talking about freaking out. So we made New Year's resolutions on the show here that we were not going to talk about Filip Forsberg at all.
Well, no, that's not what. Wait a minute, Rich. That's not what it was. No. I'm going to stop you a little bit.
Okay. All right.
We made personal New Year's resolutions regarding the Preds on our New Year's Eve episode, and my really dumb New Year's resolution personally for me with the Preds was I'm not going to obsess over Filip Forsberg being re-signed, and that was at that time. Right before New Year's Eve. And I was at that time, I'm thinking, he's going to get re-signed in February, somewhere around there. They're going to work it out. And I was totally wrong about that. That was the worst New Year's resolution I've ever made in my life.
That lasted about a week anyway. So, that's all we pretty much somehow work it in every week to talk about the Filip Forsberg contract. So
how could you not?
Yeah. I mean, it happens. So my question to you, first question is going to be, and you'll have to think about how excitable Predators fans are when I ask you this question. So how far do you think they need to go in the off season to satisfy the fan base? Do they just make the playoffs, or do they need to get past the first round? No, it's been a while since that happened, but talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, full disclosure, before the season, I picked the Predators to finish in 7th place in the Central Division. So that kind of tells you where I thought they were heading into the season. And they have, to their credit, I mean, they have wildly exceeded where I thought they would be. And, Forsberg deserves a lot of credit for that. I mean, Roman Yossi's going to get up to 90 points this year as a defenseman if he keeps on the track, which is freakish that he's able to do that.
Yeah.
So, look, I think – I know my view of this team, both in the short term and the long term, has been changed pretty dramatically this year. You've got a franchise level goalie, as well as UC Saros played last year down the stretch. I did want to see, all right, well, he's the full-time guy now, and it's a full 82-game regular season. Can he handle it? I think the answer is pretty clearly yes, that he can handle that. Yossi's still great. Ekholm's still playing really well. I like what Fabro's done this year. I like what Carrier has done this year. So you feel good about your top 4 on D. And then the big question was, could you ever get anything out of Johansson and Duchesne with those contracts? I mean, we all know it, that they let them unprotected at the expansion draft last year, and they were begging somebody to take them. And nobody, Seattle was not going to touch those 2 contracts. And those 2, to their credit, have responded really well this year, particularly Matt Duchesne. I mean, he has been unbelievable this year. So I think the way that they've played really has to change the way you view it. Now, having said that, what satisfies the fan base? I think some of that depends on the matchup. If you end up in the second wild card spot, you're taking on Colorado in the first round. Odds are you're probably not going to win that series. Now, do I think the Predators can beat Colorado? Yeah, I do. I think there's not a team in the Western Conference that I think the Predators just have no chance against. Would I pick them to beat Colorado? No. Would I pick them to beat Calgary? No, I would not. So some of this is going to depend on matchup. But I think what we've seen out of this group this year, if you're a Predators fan that was being honest with yourself heading into the season, I think you've already got to feel pretty differently and pretty good about where the trajectory of this team is playing, particularly if you re-sign Forsberg. I mean, if you don't re-sign him, then we're having, a different conversation, and you've got to figure things out there. But part of, the Forsberg conversation is also how well Duchesne's played. And, we were talking about that this morning on our show. Those 2 together, that's reason enough for me to want to keep Filip Forsberg. If this is what they are, that totally changes what this team can be over the next few years.
Absolutely. Yes, Robbie, that's kind of what I was thinking about, man. last week, really, I was really thinking about it. I'm like, okay, Matt Duchene is having this outstanding season. What is the reason? Besides, he's obviously a really talented player. That's the reason why the Predators went out and got him to begin with. But he just wasn't fitting in with his team for the longest time. And it was, fans were really upset over it, and rightfully so. But he's just really broken out this year to have not just a great year in terms of being with the Predators, but he's actually having a career type season for his entire career. Like, he's just really breaking out. And you take away Forsberg, you trade him, which is what some people are saying you need to do at this point. But if you're David Poile, it's like, okay, I'm going to trade away one of our best players, if not our best player, and we're third place in the division. And not only we might get some future draft picks, we might be setting ourselves up for 4 or 5 years down the road, but isn't it all about winning now? I thought that's what the whole point of sports is win now. And you take away Forsberg off this team, then you risk breaking up that dynamic line of Granlund, Forsberg, Duchene. Robbie, I'm really interested to ask you, do you kind of see it the same way? Like, shaking up that first line if Forsberg's out of the mix, not only are you losing Forsberg's production, obviously, but Duchene's production might drop after that. Granlund's production might drop. It's a ripple effect.
Oh, it is, for sure. I mean, David Poile said it. Like, if Forsberg's not a part of this team, like, it changes what you do as you move forward here. And, look, I know a lot of people, and I agree, like, especially after I saw the return from Calle Yarncroke yesterday when he got traded to Calgary.
Right.
I mean, it's a massive haul that Seattle was able to get for him. Just imagine what Filip Forsberg could fetch on the open market. So, like, I get the idea, if you're a Predators fan, of if you don't have him signed by Monday, like, it's too big of a haul to risk losing him for nothing. I understand that. But I've said the whole time, I like draft picks and I like prospects as much as the next person. But if you trade Filip Forsberg away, you're then going to be trying to find another Filip Forsberg. Like, that's what you're trying to do at that point. And you can always say, well, yeah, we want somebody better than Filip Forsberg. That's great. I think everybody wants somebody better than Filip Forsberg, but those guys don't come around very often. No. As if you follow this team for any length of time, it's been very difficult to find a player like Filip Forsberg. So I think having him around is crucial. And that's part of why I think the negotiations are taking as long as they did. To Forsberg's credit, I think there was a hesitation kind of on the Predators to get negotiations started too early this year because they wanted to see, all right, could he be productive? Could he stay healthy? Because that's been a problem the last couple of years as well. And he's had, a bout with COVID this year, and he's had some injury issues earlier in the year. But for the most part, he's been healthy, and there's no question about it. He's been productive. Now, that's ended up costing the Predators in the long run because if you would have signed him to an extension earlier this year, the number would probably be lower. But sometimes that's the price of doing business. And to Forsberg's credit, he's bet on himself. It's worked out pretty well for him.
Very
Absolutely.
Well.
All right. We are being joined by Robby Stanley of 102.5 The Game. And he also does mornings, Robbie and Rex Road, from 6 to 9 a.m., right, Robbie?
Yes, sir. 6 to 10. 6 to 10.
6 to 10. I'm sorry. I cut off a whole hour of your show. I'm sorry. I've never been a morning person. I've never been a morning person, Robbie, but I actually do wake up to catch y'all's show. I work late nights a lot of times, but I do not mind getting up early to listen to y'all's show. I really do enjoy it. It's awesome. Yep. And I really do appreciate you joining us for episode 114.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. I will say most days, like, I'm not even mentally awake until 7:45 at least.
That's okay. It's fair. It's fair. All right, let's get it. Awesome. It's a perfect transition here from what we were just talking about with Forsberg. So we got the trade deadline obviously coming up on Monday, and thinking about what the Preds might do. What are their weaknesses? Where could they add in this lineup? I'm of the belief that I don't want them to do too much because I really, really enjoy the chemistry of this lineup. It just really scares me to think about shaking up like the Herd line, for instance, what we all call the Herd line, of course. But I do think this team obviously has some weaknesses that they could fill if they truly are going to be contenders in the playoffs and not just be a first-round playoff exit again. So, Robbie, I really want to ask you, if they're going to be buyers and they're going to make some additions, where do you think they should go with that? What positions should they address? Are there any players out there that maybe interest you? Kind of tell us what you're thinking there.
I'm looking at two spots. I don't think they're going to do too much, to be honest with you. Like, I think they might add a veteran defenseman because look, you're going to run into injuries down the stretch. They're already seeing it with Borowiecki and with Benning. So, I think when everybody's healthy, they actually have as good of a six as they've had on D in a while. Like, I really like the Borowiecki Benning third pairing and numbers. I mean, if you want to dive into analytics, they've been pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think they feel good about that. But realistically, with the schedule being what it is and as compact as it is, and just in a playoff series, you're probably not going to stay healthy completely on your blue line coming down the stretch. So I wouldn't be surprised if they added a veteran guy like that. Maybe like I'm not saying it necessarily has to be this guy, but somebody in the ilk of like a Calvin DeHaan, somebody like that comes in and can play those third pair minutes. I don't think they're going to spend too much draft capital in order to get one of those guys. I mean, another position that I'm interested to see if they took a look at would be somebody to play on the second line. Like, I know Tolvanen scored the last game, and maybe that could be something where he's kind of breaking out of his offensive slump. I actually like a lot of the things that he's doing, but it's just not finding the back of the net this year. But it was interesting. I was talking to John Hines a couple of weeks ago, just about at that time Granlund was playing with Forsberg and Duchesne, and they were obviously being really productive. And they were searching for somebody to play with Johansson. I mean, they tried Tolvanen up there. They tried Tomasino up there. Cunnin was there. They moved Jeannot around a little bit as well. And it just never really worked. And I thought to myself, like, could they find somebody on the open market to come in at a relatively low cost that can be a middle six guy? I don't know if that's something they're going to want to take a look at or not, just based on the fact that, as we saw with Calle Yarncroc yesterday, you get into an arms race sometimes and that price gets high. So my guess is the Predators don't do much at the deadline. I think if I had to pick one move that they could make, it would be adding a veteran defenseman and just kind of seeing what they do from there.
For sure, yeah. I mean, I would love to get Phil Kessel. Honestly, Robbie, don't. That's more my personal reason because I love Phil Kessel. It's not realistic at all, but Phil Kessel will just be.
I wouldn't totally write it off.
All right. I mean, I've been kind of like Phil Kessel on this team, but I think it's more personal reasons. He obviously would add clutch goal scoring and playoff experience to this team, which I think they could use an extra person in that department. But good stuff. Rich, I know you got another good one for Robbie before we wrap this up.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it a little bit, talking about Eeli Tolvanen breaking out of his slump, hopefully, to get some more scoring for these guys. So it's painfully obvious that they need some help in the scoring category. Is there anybody else on the team you think could step up into that role, that they need to move around to try to get more of that, or do they need to go find somebody? I've been fanboying over Jake DeBrusk for a long time, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to hold on to him, but just talk a little bit about that. Just wondering if there's somebody who can step up and do that for him.
Well, internally, like, I think the long-term answer there is probably Tomasino, and I like a lot of what I've seen from him this year. I think some people may have had unrealistic expectations on him. It's pretty clear, like, he's got to get bigger. He reminds me of Forsberg when he first broke into the league from that respect. They're different players and they have different skill sets, and Tomasino is already way better of a skater than Forsberg was in his age. I think Forsberg is just naturally more gifted when you watch him play hockey, which is fine. But Tomasino has to get bigger. Like Forsberg, he got a cup of coffee at the NHL level when he first came in, and then basically played the entire next year in Milwaukee. And a big part of that was he needed to get bigger and stronger, and he did. And then his first full year in the NHL, he was really, really good. I think Tomasino, he's not going to Milwaukee at this point, but he needs to get bigger. And I think when he does that, that's going to allow him to get to the middle of the ice and to finish on some of these chances a little bit more. But I've actually been really encouraged by what I've seen from him for the most part. So I think that's something that as the season goes on, they may continue to try and do. I mean, the guy that I think would be really good to play in the middle in kind of that second line role is Tanner Jeannot. I just know that they don't want to do that. Like, they don't want to move him off that Sissons line. And I understand why. They tried it a couple of games ago, and I thought Jeannot was fine. But when you take him off that line, the Sissons line is way less effective. And
absolutely,
there are numbers that back that up. So, in a perfect world, I would love to see, if they're going to keep Johansson with Forsberg and Duchesne, I'd love to see Jeannot playing with Granlund. I think it would be awesome, but they're not going to do that, I don't think, because they love what that Citizens line brings to the table. So, I mean, I've thought about DeBrusque. I'm curious what the price would be for him. You know, I think he's 25 at this point, if I'm not mistaken. Like so he's a guy that he's a power forward type guy. He can put the puck in the back of the net. You know, his numbers don't jump off the page at you, but I think his could be as simple as a change of scenery. Like we've been talking, I mean, it's Jake DeBrusque been talking about being traded away from Boston for like 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably something that needs to happen. But, you know, I just look around right now. And the big thing I'm looking at too is if you're David Poile, the other interesting part of this season is great. And they're going to try to win as much as they can and make as deep of a run as they can this season. But if you get Forsberg re-signed, you start to see some of the young guys that you have coming together. The Predators also have something at their disposal that not many teams have in today's NHL with a flat cap, and that is salary cap space. And
yes, they do. Yes.
I would be interested to see this offseason how big of a player they are in free agency.
They can be. I'm really glad you brought that up, Robbie, because they don't have to go crazy at the trade deadline when you think about what they're going to be able to do this offseason. And so, like you said, let's just address the elephant in the room, which is getting Filip Forsberg re-signed. As long as it makes sense. Obviously, if the numbers get too high, you can't go that direction. Oh, I see somebody in there.
I don't know. My dog has just randomly decided to come in here. So
my dog's just randomly walking around on the hardwood floors in the background. That's what the tapping is for all those listeners. Normally I lock the dogs up in the bedroom when we record, but it's too sunny outside and too nice, and they've been enjoying the day. So it's not fair to lock them up. Yeah. It's not fair to lock them up, and they like to podcast too. So
that's right.
All right. So Robbie, before we let you go, again, we've been joined by Robby Stanley of 102.5 The Game. Robbie and Rex Road, 6 to 10 every weekday. Go check them out. You won't be mad that you did. They're awesome. And Robbie, it's been really awesome to have you join us. But hey, Robbie, I don't know if you knew this. We are fellow Packers fans. Me and you are. I grew up a Packers fan. Brett Favre was like my idol. My first Super Bowl I ever watched that I actually cared about was when they beat the Patriots in 96? I guess that was the year, 97.
Yep.
I don't know. Awesome. But so I've been a Packers fan ever since. I'm still a Titans fan through and through because I grew up in Tennessee. But my dream Super Bowl matchup has always been Packers Titans, and they both made it to the championship game recently, but they've lost, right? Or the Packers have at least, and the Titans lost to the Chiefs or whatever. But we're fellow Packers fans, Robbie.
Well,
how are you feeling? How are you feeling about your Packers? How are you feeling about your Packers?
I feel good. I mean, I'm kind of mad that Brady came back because I thought the path in the NFC was going to be somewhat clear with Russell Wilson leaving. I know the Rams are still there, and there's all these things, but
absolutely.
As soon as Avocado Tequila Tom Brady came back, I was like, oh man, here we go. Right. It just makes too much sense for him at like age 46 to be in the Super Bowl. But I feel good about the Packers. I mean, they're going to be really good again. It all just with them, it comes down to the playoffs. Like, can they perform in those moments? And Aaron Rodgers has had mixed results. Like some NFC title games, he's been really good, and the defense has allowed like 500 yards on the ground. And other playoff games, like this last one, wasn't very good. So I'm interested to see how they handle that part of it.
Well, everyone was running around Nashville thinking that Aaron Rodgers was going to come to the Titans, and I was like, it's not happening. Come on now. Yeah. But
although I hear he was hanging out in East Nashville last weekend, so I hope he had a good time.
I mean, it was one of those too good to be true. I would have loved for it to happen, but I didn't see that happening at all. And then they moved on to Russell Wilson, and I'm like, he wants to play for a big market most likely. But anyway, we'll save Titans talk for when that time comes. But Robbie, it's been awesome having you on here.
Thank you so much.
We'd love to have you on again in the future. Thanks so much, man. We really appreciate it.
Well, guys, you guys do a great job. I've been able to kind of jump on and watch y'all's show from time to time, and I really enjoy it. Really appreciate you taking time to have me on, and would love to come on anytime you guys want to have me.
Oh, thank you so much.
We'll definitely do it. All right, everyone. This has been episode 114 of Catfish on Ice. We appreciate everyone joining us tonight. It's been a lot of fun. We hope everyone has an awesome weekend. Take care of one another. Be kind to one another. And we will see you next week for a brand new episode. Take care, everybody.
Have a good one.